Whoa. What is Jake Paul thinking? Jake Paul's about to fight Anthony Joshua on December 19th, and I think the fight's in Miami. This has now been confirmed. We heard the rumor ever since Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis fell apart, or at least was canceled, and a lot of people started issuing some content. I'm like, let me hold back on this one because I was not convinced that he was actually going to go through with making a fight with Anthony Joshua. And he did just that. This is apparently official. Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. He's tripping. Like, look, we've off and on criticized his opponent selection. I've always looked at Jake Paul's career as having parallel lanes. One where he's fighting actual boxers, Tommy Fury, Andre August, Ryan Borland, and most recently, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And that is his path to legitimacy. Then he's got his kind of celebrity, super fight, circus fight, whatever you want to call it, lane. 50-something-year-old Mike Tyson. Anderson Silva was a little bit of both. No disrespect to Anderson Silva, who I see as being the greatest MMA striker of all time, but he was 46 years old at the time. And then Jake Paul, before that, fought Tyron Woodley twice. He, just before Mike Tyson, fought Mike Perry. So, MMA fighters and so forth. So I always saw his career going in parallel lanes. And I have always given him the benefit of the doubt in saying he's fighting increasingly credible competition. I wasn't sure what to make of the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis one. You had a lightweight, a great lightweight. Somebody who, a very talented, extremely talented lightweight, but it was still a 60-pound weight difference between the two or thereabout. But when they started talking about Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, I was like, why the hell would Jake Paul do that? You could stage a fight that has about as much interest with a fraction of the danger. Hell, Jake Paul versus Francis Ngannou would have made more sense in terms of, hey, let's mitigate some of that risk. Now, I still think Francis Ngannou would take Jake Paul's head off, but it sounded like Jake Paul, in order to work with Netflix, which is going to be who is broadcasting this fight, it sounded like he needed to make a splash, something big, something that Netflix would be on board with. And according to Mike Coppinger, those three names were Ryan Garcia, Terrence Crawford, and Anthony Joshua. And here we are. We've got Anthony Joshua. And I'm just thinking you could have been impressive in selecting opponents way less dangerous than Anthony Joshua. Hell, I've had a problem. If there was a critique over Jake Paul's opponent selection, it's always one of two things or both. It's age or size. There's always some sort of a thing, with Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, even Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. These were guys who were fighting at 170-ish or below. Now, Chavez Jr. was a middleweight champion when he was at his best. Then he started blowing weight at 160, 168, and it was only when he was way post-prime that he would fight anywhere above that. But Jake Paul is kind of a cruiserweight-ish size fighter. So I'm just give me a ranked cruiserweight. To me, that would have been okay, now we're talking. It doesn't have to be a top 5 guy. I'm not asking Jake Paul to fight Jai Opetaia or Zurdo Ramirez or even Badou Jack. I'm thinking, okay, maybe Dorticos. And I would have picked Dorticos to beat Jake Paul. Or if it was Chris Billum-Smith, Noel Mikhailian, the guy who Badou Jack just narrowly beat, or Ryan Rositzky. Any one of these top 10 cruiserweights, I would, without hesitation, pick to beat Jake Paul. And that's no disrespect to Jake Paul. He has been improving over the years. We've seen his jab improving. He largely beat Chavez Jr. with the jab. He first established himself with the right hand. We knew that he had that. It was his left hook that was dropping Nate Diaz. But that is one thing. It's another thing when you start fighting long-time, highly ranked, world-class or near world-class professional fighters your own size and who aren't in their 40s, right? Even though Badou Jack is in his 40s, then I would still, again, pick Badou Jack to beat Jake Paul. So I was thinking that maybe you pick a ranked cruiserweight. I didn't think that he was going to fight Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. That's what they were talking about, him angling after beating Chavez Jr. to then angle towards Zurdo. I'm Jake Paul ain't crazy. He's mitigating it and managing his risk while slowly building his credibility. But you don't just throw him into the deep end with one of the best cruiserweights out there. But now he's fighting Anthony Joshua. Like, how do you go from A, B, C, D? Just skip over all the other alphabets and end up at Z. That's basically what Jake Paul is doing here. Like, if there was like a graph where you're ranking his opponent quality, you would be dealing with all of the, you go from Anderson Gibb and Nate Robinson to then Ben Askren to then Tyron Woodley. But you're still kind of operating here. Anderson Silva is around here. Mike Tyson, I thought, was a few rungs below because he was in his 50s. I mean, Jake Paul lost to Tommy Fury, and then he's, beats Andre August and Ryan Brolin, stopping them both like in the first round, low-level pros. So we're still talking down here. Now you're totally just launching yourself off this whole graph page by fighting Anthony Joshua. And I know Joshua just got stopped by Daniel Dubois, but Jake Paul is not Daniel Dubois. Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, this is an extraordinary leap in opponent quality. You can't overstate how much of a jump this is. It almost doesn't make sense. And is it even worth going through the exercise of really analyzing this fight? I almost just want to go straight to the guy himself, straight to Jake Paul. Like, what are you thinking? That's what I want to do. I want to just really honestly ask him, like, I know you're going to make a ton of money, but you've made tons of money like along the way. And are you trying to show everybody how much heart you have by getting splattered by Anthony Joshua? Like, you could have done that by fighting Gilberto Ramirez for like a title, or even Badu Jack. There were other ways of doing this. Like, you could have picked another name. It didn't have to be somebody the caliber of AJ. Like, not only were you not fighting guys around your age and around your size, except for like Tommy Fury and those lower level cruiserweights that you knocked out, but now you're fighting somebody who is like 40 pounds bigger than you in AJ and is about at least 5 inches taller than you in Anthony Joshua. Like, I haven't seen Jake Paul have to jab upward yet. And now you're fighting AJ. This almost doesn't make any sense other than the money that will be made in terms of your trajectory. And if you think that you're just going to lose to Anthony Joshua, then get right back on your horse, schedule your next fight 6 to 8 months later, this could go really, really bad to where the damage could be irreparable. Like, ask Francis Ngannou. Like, not all losses are the same. And I don't see how Jake Paul comes out of this one without getting badly hurt. Like, the best you could ask for if you're Jake Paul is to get stopped like Evander Holyfield got stopped against Vitor Belfort, where you almost look kind of silly and you get clipped or something and you're kind of shaking. You just can't stand up anymore. But you didn't necessarily have to eat Anthony Joshua's best right hands. Like, God forbid, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is really almost disturbingly lopsided in terms of this matchmaking. So you go from making your matches to where you've got all of these built-in advantages if you're Jake Paul to fighting Anthony Joshua. Like, this almost signifies or signals that you didn't have a lot of options, which I'm trying to make sense out of that. And I've had homies tell me that this is a win-win for Jake Paul because, if he beats Anthony Joshua, then you're a legend. You've already made an enormous impact in the fight game based on your promotional skills and what you've done for women's boxing and just the events that you've put on as a spectacle. Jake Paul's already done that. So if he beats Anthony Joshua, though, that changes everything. It really does. That's the understatement here, right? I don't know how to further highlight that. Like, this is totally unreasonable to think that Jake Paul's got any shot at beating Anthony Joshua. I don't care how post-prime you think Anthony Joshua is because he got stopped by Daniel Dubois. Like, if Jake Paul beats Anthony Joshua, that will be extremely embarrassing for Anthony Joshua. It would almost delegitimize most of his career. That will be the staple, the one of the first lines of his career resume is that he got beat by Jake Paul. If Jake Paul beats Anthony Joshua, I don't know if I've seen anything more extraordinary. Like, look, I know Terrence Crawford just jumped multiple divisions and beat Canelo, but that's Terrence Crawford we're talking about. I feel like, and my cousin said this, I think Terrence Crawford's got a lot of people gassed into thinking that they could do the unthinkable. I hope that's not what's going on here, but I can't get into the rationale behind this matchmaking. It reminds me of like an episode of Jackass. I think I said that already in a live or something. Jackass was the show in the 90s or 2000s where, you know, Steve-O and Johnny Knoxville were like doing these like self-harm pranks where they would just do this stupid stuff, get hurt really badly, but people would tune in because it's these like wild actions that they're taking. I almost look at this matchmaking as being more akin to that than to be a respectable matchup worth breaking down and analyzing. Like Jake Paul could really get his lights put out and he could get hurt in a way where his future performance ability could get hampered by how much he could get blasted against AJ. This is pretty extraordinary. And you have to give Jake Paul credit. Even if you're thinking, well, he's making a ton of money. I mean, who wouldn't do that for all that money? Well, sure, we would do all kinds of things for $10 million, even $5 million. But Jake Paul already has a lot of money. He doesn't need to do this. And he could have picked a lot of other guys, maybe not other opponents that Netflix would approve because they're just wanting these enormous events. Maybe not something of that caliber, but he could have gone in all kinds of different directions. And it didn't have to be a heavyweight, let alone a heavyweight with the crushing power and experience of Anthony Joshua. There's only, all you could say about this is wow. And why? Those are my two responses. Wow and why. And again, I think Jake Paul's been an improving fighter. Like I would want to see him fight a ranked cruiserweight to see how good he's gotten. And if he's really a professional grade, even if it's lower level, you know, but once you start getting in the rankings, then you start working into that mid tier. I just wanted to see if he could get there. You know what I mean? I almost look at this as being like, are you just cashing out with this one and saying, okay, you know, I showed you guys how much heart I have. And yes, my heart just got splattered all over the canvas, but you've seen that I am about that life and I'm willing to step in there with even the most dangerous people. If that's what you're trying to prove, okay, at least that explains it. It still doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but it would at least explain it. I mean, there's no way Jake Paul actually thinks that he's going to win this fight or that he's got a good shot at outsmarting Anthony Joshua or setting him up for a big shot or anything like that. There's just no way. Like fighters can delude themselves into thinking a lot of different things, but Jake Paul's not a dummy. Like he knows who he sparred against and how he's done. And, you know, he knows that he's coming off of a win against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a far post-prime shell of Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. that went the distance. It's not like Jake Paul just iced him. And now you're fighting Anthony Joshua, who was just in the ring with Daniel Dubois. And just before that, you know, beat like Otto Wallin. Like, I don't know, man. Let me know what you think about this. But again, wow and why. Damn, Jake. Let me know what you think about Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. I am shocked that he actually went this route. Again, I would have been shocked if he took on Francis Ngannou because I think that Francis Ngannou would have destroyed him. But this is dangerous business. And I think that it's dangerous for the business of Jake Paul going forward, depending on how this one, you know, pans out. There could have been a lot of different ways and a lot of different directions he could have gone. It did. I mean, damn. So yeah, this is going to be on December 19th in Miami on Netflix. And how do you go from scheduling against the 135-pound Tank Davis to fighting the 245-pound, 6'5", 6'6" Anthony Joshua, former two-time champion who's still in his 30s? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You could call it a lot of things. You could call it bold. You could call it stupid. You could call it all kinds of things. But yeah, like this is something else. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. Damn. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.